I'll tell you a story about 4 fractured hips. And it has to do with my father and stepmother. My stepmother passed away at the age of 90. So these are stories that end in 2006 for my father and in 2009 for my stepmother. The first broken hip was my father. He fell, broke his hip, went to St. Joseph's Hospital in Hamilton, and then came here for rehab to St. Peter's. Recovery? Very good. No problem. Back to his home, looking after his second wife a little early. So she was starting to show early signs of dementia. Stepped out of the bed one day, slipped on the mat, fell, broke her hip. Went into North Francis Henderson Hospital for recovery, and in her case, and the result was that the anesthesia that they provided at the hospital exacerbated her dementia, and she was never able to go back to her own home. So in 2001, she was admitted to a long-term care home in Hamilton. Her hip recovered rather nicely. She was able to walk about, but her dementia kept getting worse and worse. So there's 2 broken hips. Well, not broken, fractured. My father was still visiting her, driving down to see her every day, twice a day. And lo and behold, he fell, broke a hip again. Other hip this time. Once again, recovery wasn't too bad. He was able to get back to his own home. He had a walker in the home, was able to still carry on his independence, still able to visit my stepmother. He was out shopping at one of the grocery stores one afternoon, and his nephews came running up to say hello to Grandpa, or my nephews came up running up to say hello to Grandpa, ran into him, he fell. So one of the hips was broken for the second time, or fractured. Now, it didn't reset properly. So as a result, the muscles were tightened, and as a result, he had to be in a wheelchair rather than be in a walker. That was what ultimately took him to a long-term care home. And for the last 3 years of his life, he was in a long-term care home along with my stepmother. The long-term care home said that they were really quite a cute couple. Initially, when he moved in, she could still walk, and she would use his wheelchair as a way of stabilizing things. Her dementia kept getting worse and worse, of course. Eventually, she was unable to, as you mentioned, walk on her own without high risk of falling. So she was in a wheelchair. He was still very mentally alert, even at the very end. My stepmother continued to go downhill, and they would jokingly go to the dinner with him pushing her chair from his chair, because she didn't know where she was going, but he could give her a shove and then scuttle up and push another chair. The challenge for them was independence. While he was able to recover from the hip fractures, he had his independence. Still able to drive his car, still able to visit. Fortunately, they both ended up at the same long-term care home, the one that I was affiliated with at the time. And they had separate rooms, because while he would spend all day with her in her room, the dimension was a little too much to continue for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that's my story. It's not about falling in long-term care, but falling beforehand. And that was what, in one case through dementia, and in the other case through inability to ultimately be able to care for himself in his own home, that they both came together in long-term care.